What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to another edition, of course, of the Soft Dump in the Corner podcast presented to you by North 6 Sports. Episode number 29 today as we approach the Christmas season. About 1 week away here now, well into the NHL season. Coming up, as we talked about last podcast, we got the World Juniors coming up. There's some big news out of a Canadian city. A not so happy Merry Christmas to one DJ Smith out of Ottawa, as we will get into here. But without further ado, as always, let's get into it here. Introduce Nutsy here, Luke Pendlebury. What's up, my man? How you doing today?
What is going on, everybody? Just another day driving home from work in an absolute blizzard. You just know the winter season's here when everyone can't drive because there's a couple sprinkles of snow on the ground. It's probably the most goddamn frustrating thing ever. So I'm ready to do this pod. I'm excited to get into some hockey because there's a lot of juicy content today.
So I pull into the gym tonight after work, and I'm getting ready to get out, grabbing my bag, everything. Next thing you know, I hear this, and I'm looking across the parking lot, and some guy just pulling in, just absolutely side scrapes this other car. Nobody's in there, but next thing you know, he hears, it's like there's no hiding that one. The whole parking lot hears it. The whole fucking car is just going right off. Buddy gets out and he just hammered that car. I didn't stick around to find out what they did because, quite frankly, I didn't really care. It wasn't my car he hit, but I just thought to myself, I sure hope I don't have to deal with that when I come out and get my car. So that was my experience of the evening. But
Wow.
let's get right into this here. So as we talked about, might as well get into the big news today, of course, that just came out. Ottawa Senators have fired coach DJ Smith. Unfortunate. I like the guy. I like the team that they put together. Hasn't worked out. They're last in the Atlantic. I saw something today that both the Senators and the Titanic have something in common, and that they're at the bottom of the Atlantic. I thought that was kind of funny. Cue the drum set. I thought that was kind of funny. Supposed to be a step forward this year, right? New ownership comes in, high expectations. Unfortunately, they didn't get Snoop Doggy Dogg because they would have been high in the standings, if you know what I'm saying. Not bad for a pun to start things out here, folks. But like I said, it's supposed to be a step forward this year. However, they do sit top 10 in offense. I think I saw they were 8th as of right now in terms of goals scored. What's been going on there, right? Like you look at that team, they got a lot of potential. I'll let you lead things off, but just your kind of quick thoughts on that. But did you think that the Senators were going to be last in the Atlantic around Christmas time?
No, absolutely not. And I think when we did our predictions, I may either had them fighting for a playoff spot or they squeaked into a wild card. And it's a weird situation, as I think Brady and Claude were both very vocal about. They're still listening to the coach, what he brings in, day out. So, but they're just not producing. They're not getting the goaltending. I know there's a lot of injuries on the back end. But if you're looking at this team going to the deadline, I wouldn't sell this team. I think the core and what they've put in place is still good. I'm maybe hoping with Jacques Martin coming back in. That's a throwback name. Wow, which is awesome to see, even with Alfredson as well on the bench as an assistant. I still think this team can turn around. They have the pieces, like I said, great leader in Brady Tkachuk. And hopefully they can turn around and make a push. Yeah, they're in last, but they can make a big drive the next few weeks. They can put themselves in a good position starting in the new year.
But even if, dude, I mean, making a push and making the playoffs are two very different things. I mean, geez, like they're so far behind now that getting even into a wild card spot is going to be very difficult. And hey, don't get me wrong, I cheer for the Oil. They're in just as difficult of a spot. But if you ask me, and I would like to think that you're going to agree with me here, what team would you rather have, the Edmonton Oilers or the Ottawa Senators? Who's got a better chance of making playoffs? I think first and foremost, you got to take Edmonton. And obviously, bias aside, I clearly get that. But you're dealing with the Atlantic Division where you got 3 or 4 teams that are pretty well guaranteed in the Bruins, the Leafs, and arguably either Panthers or, look at what Detroit's been doing. There's a lot of good teams in the Atlantic Division as a whole, but obviously in the East. Like we said, man, like that's such a weird thing to have happened right now with the Senators. I think I said it to you when they signed Korpisalo last summer, or this summer, I should say. I was a little bit eerie about it. He's always had okay numbers, but the underlying numbers were never there to say that he's going to take the reins and just be the number one guy, that he's going to be able to play 50, 60 games and really be a Vesna type candidate, right? Like that was a weird one for me. I thought maybe with the whole concept of hey, having Corpusalo come in there and split the tandem, maybe it'll work out. They've got obviously Thomas Chabot, who's a top end D man. They brought in Jacob Chikrin last year for a pretty heavy price tag, who has looked solid. And then obviously too, the emergence of Jake Sanderson, which most of us saw coming. What was he, fifth, sixth overall draft pick, one of the top D men of that particular year. So as a whole, like what they have to bring on the table on paper looks terrific. Like I said, they're a top 10 offense right now.
Yeah.
Timmy Stutz is doing well. Brady Kachuk's performing solid. Claude Giroux's playing okay. Batherson's obviously done what he needs to do. Like we said, like those guys are doing what they're supposed to do. They're generating a lot of offense. When you watch those games, they're fun to watch. Back
Oh
and
yeah.
forth hockey, north-south hockey. It's good to watch, but what you're seeing is you're letting those, or the goaltending as a whole, I think, as you pointed out, you're exactly correct, man, is like you look at the goals against as expected. I think I was looking at today, they're dead last in the league. Goals against for expected goals against, they're dead last in the league. They're not making those saves. They're not generating the big saves when they need to. And that's obviously blowing the wind right out of the sails in Ottawa, which evidently blew DJ Smith right out of town as well. Like I said, unfortunate time of year. I'm sure they didn't want to have to do it at this time of year, but I think they gave him, a little bit more of a leash than expected, than many people expected. And it's just unfortunate. I knew that, like you pointed out again, like a lot of those guys believed in him, really liked him as a coach. It just sometimes comes down to the voice just gets lost sometime or another, some point or another. The same old spiel, the same old coaches, structure, and constantly saying the same things. It just gets old. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, you don't see many coaches last that 10, 15 years anymore, like some of the older coaches than back in the day. So leash was short. Obviously, they needed to make a change. Good for the ownership group to not pull the trigger right away. Gave him a little bit more leeway on that particular, reign there, if you will. But just sucks. It's one of those teams, man. Like I said, I was very high on them too. Could go back and listen to what we talked about early in the year before they even started the season. I think you and I both had the Sens making that, jump forward,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So
100%.
that's a tough one to see. Like I said, hopefully they can get it back together. But at one point or another, you're already 30 some odd games in or close to. It's very difficult to come back and make up that ground alone, let alone do it in the division that they're in. Anything else you wanted to touch base on when it comes to the Sens and what they're dealing with there?
No, yeah. Just to kind of wrap up with it, I honestly think DJ Smith should have been out the door about 3-4 weeks ago. I think they were just digging themselves a hole where, yeah, like I said, they can make a good push, but it might have been a hole where they might not be able to climb out of, and it's really tough to see. And like you said, with goaltending, yeah, you may be putting five on the board every night, but if you're letting six in, you're not winning hockey games. So it's frustrating, especially with especially hard to see, especially with like Stutzel and those guys are producing. It's just they're not getting W's, and that's what matters the most, especially in a team setting.
Yeah, right. It's like when a team starts slow in the game and you'd expect the coach to take the time out and he doesn't. And then
Yeah,
next thing you know, they bury another two and you're right out of the game, right? It's just the good old analogy of just not making the right decisions, at the right time. And
yep,
now they're coming in and you look at a inexperienced, if you will, and I don't mean in the wrong way, but Steve Stais, and then obviously too putting Alfie behind the bench as an assistant coach. Like, will that be good? Will it be bad? Obviously, he has experience. He's a proven leader, whether you like to believe it or not, or and like him as a whole
yeah,
or not. Leaf fans talking to you, but you look at too, and I think the perfect example is Marty St. Louis, right in Montreal. I
yep,
think what he was able to do right away, immediately, and what he has been able to do. I understand. Listen, Montreal is not necessarily a wagon of a hockey team right now, but he has the ability to see, the offensive side of things, and certainly reflects on the play of Caulfield and Suzuki and those types of guys there. Like I said, it fluctuates, of course, but that message gets across, and maybe Alfredson can help with that. I don't believe so. I don't see it. I never
Yeah.
really thought Alfredson was necessarily the best offensive flair of a guy. He was feisty as hell and worked really hard, and that's what he
Yeah.
did well. So if he can get these kids to work really hard, that will take over the skill, right? Hard work and work ethic will always beat skill, and no matter what. So
Yep.
you never know, man. St. Louis 2019, right? They were dead last at
Absolutely.
Christmas. They won the cup.
That's true.
Those are examples that you look at and you can use, right, moving forward. So let's kind of move on here real quick. I want to talk about just injuries as a whole. Like we've seen a lot of injuries to not just necessarily, star players, but obviously, deeper players within the lineup, the bottom end there. We obviously just saw Jake Ottinger week to week now. That's a big loss for Dallas. We've been talking about it all season long already, how well he's performed. He's obviously a Vezina candidate to start. Now, week to week at this particular time of the year, is that a good thing? We're coming up to Christmas time. They're going to get, I don't know what, 5, 6 extra days off or so.
Yeah.
Maybe they called it week to week, knowing that he's only missing a few different games. But just to look at a few here, I mean, Patrick Laine re-injured again here, broken wing again. Guy just can't fly, right? It's hard to soar like a eagle when you're flocking with a bunch of turkeys, as they say. Devils injury bug too, right? Jack Hughes just came back from a 7-8 game or maybe more stint of injury there. Of course, they early on had Nico Hischier, who missed close to 10 some odd games, I believe, if I'm correct on that one.
Yeah.
Dougie Hamilton's out for a couple months, or it was, a couple weeks ago, got injured. Vanacek as well. Like, what's your take on all these star players, all these big name players getting injured right now so early in the season?
Yeah, it sucks obviously for teams that want to produce and make a statement this year. And I think Devils and Dallas are probably near the top of that list to make that push. Dallas was in the Stanley Cup Finals a few years ago, so they've been kind of contending for the last few years. Yeah, Ottinger's week to week, but like you said, Christmas break's coming up. They're gonna get some extra days off. I wouldn't be too worried. They have a crazy good core in front as well with Miro Heiskanen, even Sagan and Ben taking a step back or a step forward, but they were struggling the last few years. And then you got the young core, Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz. Even Matt Duchene is playing very well, fitting in that
100%.
core, in that top six. So I'm not very worried about that team. I think they're going to be just fine, even if they drop a spot or two. They'll get Ottinger back and find themselves back near the top again. With the Devils, like you said, they had the injury bug. They got some of these guys back, like Hughes and Hischier. But they're 7-3 in their last 10. Again, another team I'm not very worried about. They're taking that step forward. Hughes is on a tear. I got an eye on him because he's my number one fantasy player. So I got always keep an eye on that man. And even with Hamilton injured on the back end, you got Luke Hughes who's taken a huge step in his game this year. So he can maybe down the road be that number one guy for the Devils.
When he's not getting
But
absolutely whopped in the corner.
yeah, glad he's not like completely injured. He's taken a couple big hits, but
Hard lessons
I
to
like the
learn.
way he's been playing. His IQ's strong. He knows where to go. Obviously, with his brother too, playing alongside him and having that overtime winner, passing it from Jack to Luke, and Luke bowing to the crowd. I thought that was pretty cool. Just having that brotherly connection. So it does suck with these injuries. Line I don't know what Columbus is an absolute dumpster fire right now. Werenski's their point leader at 23 points with 1 goal. No one's over a point per game. There's just no push from the veteran leadership there, and I don't know. There's a lot of young guys in there, and having what's his face in the minors early. What's his name? Jesus, the golden goal kid.
Ken Johnson.
Yeah, Ken Johnson. I
Scored a
don't know how I
nasty
really
OT
felt.
winner against the Leafers, though. Top titty
Yeah.
2 by
No,
4.
yeah, and I don't know how I really felt about him being sent to the minors. They need offensive help, anything they can. Goudreau looks terrible. Line looked terrible when he was healthy, and I don't know. Those young core pieces are gonna have to step up in the next couple of years if they want to make a statement in this league.
Yeah, weird one.
It's
And
unfortunate.
man, the Blue Jackets are such a weird hockey team to watch. You look at their leaders or supposed leaders, Gaudreau and Line, they just play like they're so uninterested. There's
I
nothing
know.
about their game. There's no flair. There's no piss and vinegar. They don't tie things up in front of the net or,
No.
start scrums is what I mean in front of the net. Like they're never
Yeah.
involved. If you're not going offensively, and you're never a strong defensive player as a whole, you got to find a way to get involved in the game.
Yeah.
You go out there, I don't give a
Yeah.
fuck if you go out there and just slash somebody on the wrist just to cause to
Just
do
something.
something. Put 2 minutes in the penalty fucking stat box if you're gonna do anything at all. I don't care.
Get just get your name announced
Make
on the
it look like you're
jumbotron.
doing something out there. Like, it's incredible, man, when you watch those guys. And
Yeah.
then, obviously, like I said, they're learning. These young kids, excuse me, are learning from guys like that who have been. I think Goudreau hit 100 that one year, right? In Calgary, 100 points.
In
Right,
Calgary,
so
yeah.
you're gonna
Him
100
and
point guy
Chuck.
there. Line should theoretically be a 40 to 50-ish some odd goal scorer if he was just healthy. Unfortunately, can't stay healthy. You bring Goudreau over to try and make Line more effective again by giving him those passes and being the playmaker. But like I said, you look at Goudreau now, and it's like he does the same thing every single time. When you go down, you watch Goudreau the next time you see him down the ice. If he's on a 2-on-1, he's not even passing anymore, and he's shooting high glove, high glove, high glove, high
I
glove,
know.
high glove. That's the only shot he ever takes. Johnny Goudreau,
I know.
high glove king. He scores it a lot, I'm sure, but doesn't get those chances very much. But nowadays, you're looking
No.
at like a lot of these players. I don't know what it is. Maybe you're just looking at like he's not going to pass this guy. You wonder. Here's a thought for you: does Goudreau just have no faith in a lot of the players he's playing with? Does he say, "I got to do this myself"? Right? Excuse me. So like that's a weird one there. It's a tough one to watch. Columbus. They're such a boring hockey team. Like if you really want to fall asleep on a nice Sunday night, hopefully the Blue Jackets and the New York Islanders are playing. That's an easy one to fall asleep to. Get a little bit of a fire by your side, a little bit of wine, maybe some Pinot Grigio, and you will
Don't
sleep
even
like a
need Zequel.
baby. But you won't even
Don't
last.
even need
You won't
Zequel.
even last the first period. Unbelievable.
Did you hear Biz on
Yeah.
TNT? He's like, "Do you want Cole or
Yeah,
season
what do you want for
Islanders
Christmas?
season
Cole or
ticket?"
Islanders season tickets? Like, that's about as
Oh
good a
my
summation
god, I
that
was
you can put in
dying.
those two hockey teams. Just downright embarrassing squads. I'd rather watch the
Oh yeah,
Coyotes nowadays because at least they're actually exciting to
man,
watch.
they are
At least they
exciting.
are
Oh
exciting to
yeah.
watch. Holy whistling.
Oh.
Unbelievable. The Yotes. Um, anyways, let's not get too fired up on that particular concept. They're trying hard. Both teams are trying very hard. Let's go into a little bit of a better topic here. So let's do a hot and not conversation here. Players who are playing really well, they're hot right now. Players who are not. Let's start with hot, right? Because obviously we want to go with some positives here to start. My first hot and my first positive here is Nate McKinnon, 15
Oh.
game point streak. Started out the season pretty slow. Was just shy of a point per game. I don't know what it was. Maybe he was dealing with something. Maybe just the bad luck was on his side. The puck wasn't rolling on his stick. It's the same thing as McDavid early on in the year. Just you look at those little quick spurts, they weren't necessarily there. Just the timing was just a bit off. Not anymore. Nate Dogg is just buzzing right now. He looks
Just galloping
scary
out
out there.
there.
Every single shift too. Like he might very well be the best player in the league at this particular moment. He's just tearing it up. He's really boosted himself right up there in the tops. I think he's second in points just behind Kucherov, I think by 4 or 5 points now. Considering, like I said, in the first month or so, I think McKinnon had, maybe 10 points or something like that. I should probably have done that, a little bit of looking on that one. But like I said, 15 game point streak for Nate Dogg. They're coming together. Cale Makar's been injured, so obviously he's stepped up huge. They are missing Landeskog, though. Let me tell you, man. Holy,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is with
Yeah.
that team
The
there.
grit.
They look really solid. Their power play is going to be solid as a whole. That back end, Makar and Taves are going to be strong as ever. But just something about the depth on that team that they just don't seem to have that same style of play that they have in the last couple of years. And like I said, losing a guy like Landeskog, you're going to hurt no matter what team you are. I don't care if you're an Olympic gold medal team. Losing Landeskog is a big loss. But
Yep.
what's your take on just on Nate Dogg, Avs, anything like that, or even just go right into your hot?
Yeah, I love that team, man. I love the Avalanche, just the way they play. Nate Dogg, the guy just gallops out there. I love that. Like just the plays he makes. Even last year, I think it was last year in playoffs, that goal he scored against St. Louis, a hat trick goal where he just came in short side. Holy
Yeah,
fuck!
nasty,
Like, this guy is
nasty.
so gross.
And then they lost the game
Um,
in overtime.
I know, he's probably in that locker room fucking furious.
100.
Anyways, yeah, he would be right up there as a candidate for MVP. If Tampa was maybe a little better, I'd probably maybe sneak Kucherov up there as well. Guy's got 52 points in 31 games this year, 11 in his last 4. He just makes the game look so easy out there, but the problem is it's like not even in a playoff spot. So like if they make playoffs and he ends up with first place with 100 and let's call 140 points, I'd probably give him
I
MVP.
think I
But
did the math. He's on
Nate
pace
Dogg's,
for 137 or 138 or something like that, which would be a career high for
yeah,
him.
yeah, because he won MVP with
9, I
129
think.
or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
128. Yeah, so no, I like the way he plays. Just makes it very simple out there. But as a Tampa fan, there's some games out there where he's just got that Russian mentality, and he just looks like he's dog assing out there. I'm swearing on my goddamn TV. I'm like, go do something. It's like that meme with the stick. Go do
I
something.
was thinking it.
Like you're
Yeah,
poking the rock.
do something.
Do
Dude,
something.
I
Come
was thinking
on.
about it the other day, though, and I know you and I have chatted about this several times, but just the amount of quality players that Tampa's lost over the last 3-ish
I
years,
know.
it's
Makes
honestly
me sad.
disgusting. Like, obviously, I always say to you, the biggest loss, the absolute biggest loss, Ryan
McDonough.
McDonough on the back end was
Yeah.
huge for them. And obviously, too, like you look at the guys, Yanni Gord, Palat, Alex Killorn, right? Like
Blake Coleman.
Coleman. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
they've got 5 or
Yeah.
6 top 6 forwards that they've lost in the last 3 years, have still played a disgusting amount of hockey and still made it work. But it's just incredible that they couldn't. And obviously, that obviously speaks volumes about the cap. Because if they could, afford those guys, I sure as hell don't think they would have let them go, at least for nothing. But just crazy the fact that they're still doing
Yeah.
what they are with just I shouldn't say with how little they have it, but just crazy to see how good their top 3 guys are, and obviously Hedman too. Vasi back is starting to look very sharp. Fucking 51 saves against the Oilers, made about 8 or 9 grade A saves. I was
Oh yeah.
he made a save, dude. It was about 6 or 7 minutes into the Oil game. The Oil were just buzzing. Obviously, Stammer scored about a
Yeah.
minute in on the power play goal. I get that. The Oilers were just buzzing right after there. Should have scored right away. And he made 2 or 3 massive saves, just sprawling out. The guy is about 19 feet wide when he lays down, spread eagle. It's just, you can't teach that. All right. Not only is he
No.
so big, but he understands the game so well. It's incredible to watch Vasilevsky when he's playing, to his full potential and is
At his
hot
best.
and,
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's scary, scary good. You just can't see any of the net. And then obviously too, like I said,
Yeah.
even if you move the puck east-west, you better do it quick. And even if you do it quick, you have to make sure that that shot is in a specific box or corner of that net that is just so difficult to hit, right? So kudos to them. Kudos to Vasilevsky finding his game after missing the first 2 months there. That's a huge bounce back for them. So that was another part of my hot there. I wanted to talk about too, Brock Besser, tied for first in the league,
Yeah. Sick.
23 goals, obviously tied with Austin Matthews here. He is shooting a 26% right now. 26%.
Fuck.
One of every 4
Jesus.
goals one of every 4 shots is going in the net. Here's the thing though.
That guy's
And
just sharp
yeah,
shooting, buddy.
literally, he's playing Duck Hunter on the N64 or the Nintendo, I should say, with the little dog that jumps up.
Yeah. Yeah.
26% career, or 26% this year. He's only shot a career 13.6. He is scoring on twice the amount of shots this year so far
Jesus.
through 30 some odd games. I get that. There's due for some regression. But
Yep.
geez, man, like 23 goals already on the year. That's just a bit over 60 goal pace or close to a 60 goal pace. What do you think he ends up with? Let's say he regresses back to, even meet in the middle. What are we, 26 and 13? Like, even if he meets around a 18, 19%, that as a whole, she gets 2-3 shots a game average, right? Like, he could very well end up with 50 easily this year based on his hot start. So kudos to him, but what's your take on Besser and his hot start continuing on?
I love the way this kid plays, and I think years ago he had that boost where he just finds an eye for the net. He just shoots wherever puck goes in the net. I think with kind of what's going on in his life with his dad passing, obviously very sad. I think it obviously took a toll on him and the way he, took forward in his game. So, um, not saying he's over it, but I think being able to evolve and take the next step back into his game and finding the groove and the love for the hockey, I think it's nice to see him find the back of the net again. Just seems like an overall good dude, and plus the rest of the team is buzzing as well.
Yeah.
Like Quinn Hughes is on a Norris pace to take that, and Elias Pettersson's another player who's been just a sharpshooter, probably going to be 110 point player, looking for a new contract. So it should be interesting to see what number comes out of for his paycheck each week. It's going to be pretty damn high. But happy to see Besser scoring again, and I think Vancouver was missing that, especially the last few years when they were looking for goal scoring and they couldn't find it anywhere. So happy to see Vancouver progress in the right way.
Yeah, getting a ridiculous amount of offense from their defense too. I mean, you look at, like you
Yeah.
just pointed out, Quinn Hughes, he's got 39 points, 32 games. Philip
Yep.
Hronek, 28 points in 32 games. Like, where is that coming from? Even Tyler Myers already has 15 points in 32 games. Like, they're getting a lot of
Yeah.
good depth scoring from obviously their forward group, like you touched on. But, even too, like 45 points in 32 games for JT Miller. Like, the guy almost put up 100 the other year, and we all thought it was an anomaly. Like, we're sitting there, oh, that's career year for JT Miller, 90, high 90
Yeah.
points. Now he's on pace for 115, 120. I love JT Miller. Oh, what a
He's
hockey
a Swiss
player.
Army knife. He does
What
everything,
a
man.
hockey player. Like, just an absolute guy you want on your team. I bet you the Tampa Bay
Yep.
Lightning would just love to have that guy on their roster.
Yeah.
Holy, can you
Yep.
imagine he was still there? Like,
Absolutely.
that's another guy. Like, fuck me, right?
Yeah.
Like, unbelievable. Um, Last one I wanted to just say, I don't want to talk too much on it on the hot side of things, but just Vegas, man, like, oh, whoa,
Oh my
just will
God.
not. They're relentless, dude. I mean, injuries too. Shea Theodore's still out. He's missed quite a few games. Aiden Hill missed about 5, 6 games or so, whatever there. Logan Thompson just stepped right in. No problem. I'll win some games. I'm playing behind arguably the best defensive core in the league. Jack Eichel's continued his dominancy from playoffs. Mark Stone, he's obviously healthy again coming into the season. They've just got such a sick squad, man. They're so deep too. So kudos to them. You know, I
Yeah.
I I like that team. I like a lot of their guys. they're good, great leadership group. Obviously, Pietrangelo, Mark Stone, obviously captains. Pietrangelo used to be captain of the Blues, if I'm correct on that.
That's correct. Yep.
And then too, like obviously Jack Eichel, is starting to slowly become a really strong leader around the league, and just be known for that, and not just an offensive flary kind of guy that's never going to do anything. I think winning that cup really took a lot of stress and pressure off a lot of those players. Don't forget,
Yeah.
man, like between Vegas and the Kraken, a lot of those roster and those players, maybe not so much Vegas anymore based on the amount of moves, but a lot of their main guys, man, like they're all kind of players that people didn't want, right? You even look at
Yep.
even keeping Eichel as an example, like they got rid of him because Buffalo basically was just tired of him. Right? They didn't get rid of him when he was putting up 120 points and one of the better players in the league. They didn't just say, "Oh, we're going to get rid of one of the best players in the league." It's like they just thought, "Hey, maybe we don't think his neck injury is going to heal the same. Maybe he's never going to be the player that we thought he was going to be. Let's try and capitalize and get the absolute best deal possible." Right? So that's
Yeah.
just crazy to see how good they've been doing again. They're just dominating. They're first in the league again this season, and obviously too, it's a different ballpark when you get to come trade deadline and then come playoffs. But kudos to them, right? Anything else on Vegas you want to
Yeah.
touch on before we get into the knots?
Yeah, no, I'll add a quick thing. They're just a tough team to play against. And it's a hard barn to play in too. You gotta realize like these guys are coming into Vegas. They're all probably gambling and drinking degenerates like ourselves. So they're gonna come in, fire it up in Vegas. Might be a slow game night. But at the end of the day, like the playoffs, just big defensemen, fourth line grinding. They had average goaltending, but we also noticed average goaltending in Colorado when they won too. So just seems like if you have a good back end core, you can win hockey games and you can win a Stanley Cup. So, no, kudos to them. I didn't think in the first 5-6 years they were going to win a cup, nor even sniff to get near one. But kudos to them. They put a good team together, and I'm happy for Eichel. I've always been a big fan of his, so glad to see him win and start producing offensively again, like he did back in the old days.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Let's go to the knots here. The not T list. I'm crushing the puns tonight. First and foremost, hate to admit it, but Connor Brown, buddy, I know you missed all last year with the hard, heavy knee surgery, the knee injury, the ACL. 1 point in 32 games playing with Draisaitl and McDavid. Fucking Patty Maroon probably would have already had 20 points in the amount of games. Like, what is
Fuck,
going
I might have
on
had
over
20.
there? Like, he gets the puck on his stick and he looks like he's working hard out there. He'll make some okay decisions. He wins a lot of puck battles when it comes to the forecheck. He's strong on his stick. He gets into shooting lanes and does defensively really well. But for some reason, his offensive game just went down the toilet. It's insane, man. Watching that guy, like he just can't. Anything you put him in the offensive zone, just absolutely useless out there right now. I don't understand it
Yeah.
because he works really hard. Like I said, he's positionally sound a lot of the times. He doesn't get beat defensively very often. He is a smart defensive hockey player, so that's probably why he's still seeing some solid minutes. I will admit, the last few games, it looks kind of like he's getting a little bit more of a jump. He did have a disallowed goal already not long ago too, which kind of stinks. Sometimes you just need to get one, whether it's a lucky one off the shin pad or just a tip off the whatever, or a wide open net, maybe an empty netter. But just not seeing those. But just 1 point in 22 games, a little over $3 million cap hit. That's basically coming off the books for next year. Not leaving the oil with too much to work with here. Kind of sucks to see. I was excited about the signing. Has not worked out as a whole. Still the type of player that I want in my playoff roster, if the Oilers can make the playoffs, that is. But just a weird one to see. I was expecting a little bit more, but 1 point in 22 games is just not going to cut it.
No. If you haven't checked out our TikTok channel yet, I posted a video about 3 months ago saying Connor Brown's got 30 rips this year. So check it out if you haven't seen
Hey,
it.
man, you never know. There's a lot of guys like look at Zach Hyman right now, man. Like he is on pace right now for
Oh,
54. And he does a
oh,
very similar role than that Connor Brown does.
oh,
So you don't ever know. Sometimes it just
a
takes
dog.
10 goals in 4 or 5 games to be right on the pace you're looking at, right?
I'm glad Hyman can play hockey because he sure can act. Have you seen that
Oh my
Pepsi
God. They're all
commercial?
brutal. Even the one with
Morgan's
Suzuki and
brutal
David
too.
Savard, they're brutal. It's it's like they let an 8-year-old write the script.
Oh, god
Unbelievable.
damn it.
Him and Morgan Riley, the same. They're just,
Oh,
thanks for your
brutal.
cash. We'll give you 5 or 6 hours of our time to go shoot some commercials and go from there. Bob's your uncle.
Oh, tough luck.
Anything else you wanted to add on Brownie?
No, not much. It's too bad. I like him too, and I thought maybe the connection in Erie when McDavid and Brown play together. I thought maybe they
Even the
could find it early.
they coached him too.
And the coach. They got the trio. So yeah, maybe it'll figure itself out down the road, but just obviously a slow start, disappointing start. Especially for either Gord or the Oilers fan, it's just a tough look. I thought
You
maybe he
watch
could start
Connor Brown's
producing.
going to score the Stanley Cup winning goal in overtime. Mark my
In the AHL
words.
playoff.
Let's move on here. So this one was shocking to me when I did a little bit of research and figured this one out. Ilya Sorokin has the 6th most goals against this season among starting goalies. He's got a 3.15 goals against, but a 912 save percentage. AKA, guys getting zero help. Like zero help. I think they've allowed 100 goals already on the year, which is completely rare for the Islanders. They are in 1-0, 2-1 games more than you can count fingers and toes every week. Like, I don't get that, man. They are just stinking defensively this year. Obviously, as we all know, there was a shakeup last year. Trotz is out. And then they kind of come in, change the structure around, be a little bit more offensively, bring in Bo Horvat. Everything you lines up. They didn't lose much on the defensive end. Pulak and Pellick and all those guys still there. Dobson's taken a great step forward. He's
Oh,
producing offensively
it's
extremely well.
sick.
He looks solid in his defensive zone. I can't say you sit there and blame Sorokin. Maybe there's an injury going on. Maybe it's just a couple bad bounces, bad luck. But it's just a weird year so far to start for the Isle. Just letting in a lot of goals. And as we know, for ever since about 1984, after they won 4 in a row, they've sucked offensively. So I don't know what they need to do. What can you really do? Who are you really going to bring in to mix into that and mesh in with that lineup there? Because it sure as hell can't just sit there and be like Anthony Beauvillier was the difference maker, because that ain't the truth, right? So it's a weird one. What's your take on the Isle this year?
New.
Just stinking,
Yeah.
laying some wet farts.
they're just a boring team to watch to start with, and they got scumbag fans too, so that doesn't really help much. That's another ball game with the JT situation. I could go on and on about it, but no, it's just showing you statistically, Sorokin, like you said, is getting zero help. And you know what? Like, I have a couple of their guys in fantasy, Dobson and Barzell. They're playing great offensively. Barzell's over a point per game. I don't think he's been producing at this high of a rate since his rookie year. I think he put up 85 points. And then Dobson's finding his own as being that number one D man that the Islanders have been looking for. I mean, you got Pollock on the back end, who's also fantastic. Great two-way player, but I don't know what it is. I think Lou's gonna have to start taking some heads here. Maybe allow them to grow some beards and change up this dynamic and get them flowing, because they are boring and they are not doing so well. But if they want to trade Sorokin, they can do that. I hate the Islanders, I'll be honest with you. Scumbag fans.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it on that one. I couldn't agree any further. One of the worst fan bases in the league, next
Oh,
to the Toronto
brutal.
Maple Leafs, but didn't hear that from me.
Oh, well,
Buffalo
yeah.
Sabres, my last one here. What the hell is going on in Buffalo?
Oh,
2.8
buddy.
goals a game. Rasmus Dahlin and Casey Middlestat lead the team with 25 points. I understand Tage Thompson was injured for the last, 7-8 games, maybe a little bit more. But
Yeah.
just they get next to no scoring. I was expecting a huge step forward year for Dylan Cousins. That absolutely has not happened. I think he's maybe a half a point per game. Holy cow, that salad's just getting to me. That like half a point a game for Dylan Cousins right now. Jeff Skinner's doing Jeff Skinner things. He's still producing his shots and getting the attempts, but just puck's not making a way in the net. So that's a weird one for me. Buffalo's on my not list as of right now, just as of like what the hell is going on for them. Hasn't really worked out. Anything you really want to touch base on Buffalo? I don't want to dive too deep into it as a whole. There's so much you can
No.
look at and factors in, but you should never really be having a defense min as a whole, or even to your arguable second, if not maybe third line center in Casey Middlestat leading your team in points. I understand he's taken a step forward, but there's a lot of guys in that team that haven't been playing to their potential, and it's clearly reflecting on their record, because they're not playing very strongly offensively and just can't seem to kick it into gear.
I think it's like the complete opposite of Ottawa. They're struggling to find the puck in the back of the net, but they're doing all right defensively. Just combine those teams, take the bottom half of Buffalo and the top half of Ottawa. You got a playoff team.
Yeah, that's basically right. Yeah.
Literally.
So
It's
it's
funny.
a weird one. Two individual stats that I kind of pointed out just specifically as a whole that I found really intriguing so far. Matty Beniers, man, 13 points in 32 games. Second overall pick. Took a big step forward last year, started to really find his way last season, driving the puck to the net, becoming a force in the offensive zone. He's got a 6 shot. He plays for a team that produced a ton of goals last year for some fucking reason. Seattle cannot
Yeah.
score and they cannot save the puck. So yeah, 13 points, 32 games. He's a minus 20 in 32 games already this season.
Masters champ.
Green jacket. Just getting absolutely worked, and I don't understand it. Like, I gotta be honest,
Yeah.
haven't watched too much Seattle or too many Seattle games.
No.
But just I'm smart enough to know that Matty Beniers is a way better player than 13 points in 32 games and should not be a minus 20, considering the fact that when you watch a lot of what he did last year in particular, to go and
Yeah.
correspond with a lot of the players on their team, scoring 5-on-5, you shouldn't be getting outscored by almost 20 goals. It's just not right. So that's a weird one for me. And then the last one here is Timo Meier, 11 points in 22 games, basically a 41-point pace for a fresh off the $10 million signing. Holy, do the Devils ever feel dumb
Yikes.
as of right now? This guy could easily turn it around. Don't get me wrong. Hell of a
Yeah.
hockey player, playing with arguably one of the top 5 offenses in the league with Hughes and Toffoli. Nico Heischer's back and he's healthy. Obviously, if Hamilton's healthy, he's on the back end. But he's also, dude, 22 games, minus 17. That's even worse
No,
pace
no.
than Bernier's. Like, what is going on right now? Unreal, man. I understand the
He might
Devils.
pass he might pass Beniers on the back nine for the
Yeah, man.
Jacket.
He needs a couple Eagles. He needs the Eagle 15, and he's basically ready to, he's pushing down the hop. But like, dude, just those two guys just kind of stood out to me. There's plenty others that you can look at from both perspectives, but holy man, Verniers and Meyer, like you guys gotta after you what you better ask Santa nicely for a good second half, good back nine on this year's round of golf because those are both not looking very strong. For Berniers' first contract, he's got Zegras bridge deal written all over it. And Timo Meier, dude,
Yeah.
fresh off signing $10 million, 40 goals last year, 11 points in 22 games. With that offense, not good enough.
Not a good look. Very, very
Not good
bad.
enough. So let's jump into another one here real quick. Buyers and sellers this year. I just specifically wanted to talk Canadian teams. We're far too early to really be looking at buyers and sellers. This next month, excuse me, we're going to see roughly another 10 games over this month or so. A lot can happen in 10 games. Look at what the Oil did. Look at, what arguably Ottawa just did. They found themselves way out of it. Canadian teams, players to watch as a whole. I think a lot of us are already looking at Calgary, Montreal, and Ottawa as being sellers this year, which is really unfortunate for Canadian hockey and as a whole. But there's going to be a lot of movement, I think, this year at the trade deadline because there's a lot of key pieces on those 3 teams that have very good value contracts. You look at Elias Lindholm right away. I think he's only making like just shy of 5, right? Hanifin and
Mhm.
Tanev, those types of guys that are going to be
Mhm.
presumably traded. If they don't, then no big deal. I'm sure they can still push for it, but I just don't know if they got a chance at making playoffs. But there's a lot of really good bang for your buck contracts on those, in particularly Calgary. Montreal too, maybe your Sean Monahans of the world. See if they can move on from one of their goalies, of course. And then Ottawa too. Like, do you make some moves just to kind of say, hey, let's just move on to next season, recoup a little bit. Maybe we can get a little bit of cap space off the books. Maybe we can get some draft capital, etc. That's a weird one there, but anything you want to take from those 3 Canadian teams and what they might be doing moving forward in the rest of the season?
Yeah, I have Calgary as a seller. Obviously, we mentioned the big names in Hanifin and Tanev, and there's some key pieces for to push for a contender to take that next step and try and get it all the way. So I could see Tanev going to the Leafs. They got to make some things move around in terms of
I
money,
see.
but I
Sorry,
still
2
think
seconds. I don't see it. Mainly for the mere
no.
sake of Zadorov first. They basically said, I am not trading Zadorov to the Leafs. I don't think that Calgary wants to help out the Leafs at all and help Tree Living out at all. Because truthfully, between you and I think we'd both agree. What's that bigger price tag, Zadorov or Tanev?
Right
Like,
now,
but it doesn't matter. Hindsight as a whole, who would you rather have, Tanev or Zadorov?
I rather I would rather have Tanev.
100%, right? And you
Er,
look at what the price
Yeah,
tag was for Zadorov, the Leafs could have easily
yeah.
afforded that. No doubt about it.
Oh God,
I'm
yeah,
telling you right now, the price tag that Vancouver was offered versus what Toronto was offered was very, very different. And I really don't think Calgary
yeah.
wanted to help Tree Living. And unless they really,
Maybe.
you know, really put together a hell of a deal for Tanev, I just don't see it. I really don't see Tanev coming to the Leafs. I don't, and it's not that he's not a good fit because he's the perfect fit. I just don't see
Oh yeah.
Calgary wanting to help out Toronto this season. I really don't.
Yeah, no, honestly, possibly for sure. It's just Calgary's just a weird team this year. Something's obviously lingering in that locker room because Huberdeau hasn't found his stride. Maybe he's dealing with something mentally, personally. I don't know what. I'm not putting any rumors out there, but I'm just saying he's been struggling as the minute he's walked into the Calgary Flames locker room. He hasn't scored in 13 games. He hasn't scored since November 20th. It's almost going to be a month
He's
and
been
2
missing
days.
out his
He hasn't put
vitamin
puck in
D
the net.
from that hot Florida weather.
Yeah, and he's missing out on his teammate
Oh,
Barkov too.
unbelievable.
Probably setting him up all day. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. No one's a point per game. I think Kadri's their leading goal scorer. But there was a lot of talk in that offseason where no one wanted to re-sign. So something's obviously going up on there. I don't know what it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if 3 or 4 of these big names on this team get moved and they maybe push into a reseller. Montreal, maybe a little more challenging, and maybe after I wrote this, I might regret it, but whatever, who cares? I already said Brownie's going to be a 30 goal scorer this year. So, um, Josh Anderson's struggling this year, but is that a player that maybe can move somewhere
Oh,
as a
I'd love
contender?
that
Like
guy on my hockey team.
yeah, he's getting 5 mil a year, but you could probably get him in a contender where he can just start throwing the body for you. Like he's not a guy that needs to score for you. He just needs to be like a Tom Wilson when Washington made their run for the cup and just being that body that can just rough it up because that's playoff hockey,
And
baby.
not to mention too,
So
like you look at that kind of player, you could easily get a prospect in a second or third and have Montreal eat a mil and a half or 2 mil of that contract
yep,
easily. You get Josh Anderson
yep,
on a $3 million contract for the rest of the year. Absolutely, you're taking that.
rock
That
and
guy's
roll.
definitely
Yep,
a difference maker. If you put him in a locker room that's like contending, that's pushing for a playoff spot. I think he'd be a tremendous, tremendous hockey player. You saw what he did when they went
absolutely.
on that Stanley Cup run, right back in what
Yeah,
was it, 2020, when they lost
yep.
to Tampa, got
Tampa.
mollywop, but like he was a huge
Yeah, it
part
wasn't
of that
close.
run, one hundred
Yep.
percent. Anything else, buyer seller, super quick? I think we should kind of look at that closer to deadline time when we can kind of put
The
together
buyer
and get a
section.
little
Yep.
bit of a better idea. Like I said, there might be a team right now. Fuck, Ottawa might go on a 10-game win streak. Not likely, but they might. And we might be talking someone
They
totally
might.
different, right? So we'll bring that one up closer to the
Yep.
time. I want to end on a good one here, a little fun one. Just talk a little bit about best and worst contracts. This is very like quick put together. I just wanted to have a couple that I was looking at really quickly here. Let's do best first because I think it's a little bit more fun to look at the worst contracts in the league. But just best as a whole. I'll tie these two together and I'll let you talk about them too if you need to. But just the Hughes brothers, man. Jack making
Yeah.
8 mil. He's on pace for 119 points, even after missing close to 7 to 10 games, I think, there. And Quinn Hughes, 7.85, on pace for a 99. Call it 100 points. But is it really 100 points? Ask Mitch Marner. Those two, man, like that family's nasty, right? So that's those like
Yeah,
two
they're sick.
tremendous, like Jack Hughes, like I said, 8 mil for the next, I think, 6 years after this. I think he was 8 by 7 when he signed. I think a lot of people looked at that contract right away and was like, that's a steal. Very, very good deal.
Yep.
Quinn Hughes, a little bit different. A lot of people looked at that and was just like, he might be worth that money, but he's not necessarily going to be a kind of guy that's going to be anywhere near, 90 some odd points or so. He obviously set the original record for quickest assist before Cale Makar said, yeah, see you later, bud. But as a defenseman, I mean, I think that was out of 200 games played. I think that was the record there, just to clarify for everybody what I'm talking about on that. But just the Hughes brothers, man. I mean, dynamic contracts. Both teams are probably both franchises are probably extremely happy getting those guys signed long
Oh
term at the
yeah.
price point that they're at. They're going to be producing for a very long time there. And then the last one that I have, and I touched on it earlier, Zach Hyman, 5.5 mil on pace for 54 goals and close to 100 points again,
Yeah.
if I'm correct on that.
Yeah.
Touch base on those super quick. I want to just quickly look at Hyman's pace for points, but on pace for about 54 goals, $5.5 million. Do you think the Maple Leafs could have had Zach Hyman for $5.5 million? If the answer is yes, you are correct. Thank you very much for the hardest working player in the league.
Yeah. No, you touched the base. You hit the nail right on the head with the Hughes brothers. Like, and I think the biggest thing that stands out in those contracts is they're freshly new contracts. So it's not like these
Yeah,
guys are putting up
good
big
point.
numbers and like,
Good
oh, they're
point.
getting a
Yeah,
new contract the next couple of years. No, they're locked in 6, 7 more years at
not
that
like
price. Like, we're gonna look at this contract in 5 years, and this is gonna be probably the best contract in the last
yeah,
20
it's not like
years. Like, it's just
Draisaitl.
gonna be
Not like
so good.
Draisaitl making 8.5, and now you're like, oh well, shit. He put up 130 some odd points, 50,
Yeah,
50, 50 some odd goals. Now all of a sudden they're like, oh,
yeah,
we got to re-sign this guy, and he's probably gonna make 12, 13 easily
yeah.
if he decides to take
Um,
that money. Which go back a couple podcasts
yeah,
ago, I said he's gonna take a cut. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, all good. But no, just to wrap it up, these two are going to be the figures of this league, and being American, they're just going to build on that USA team. Hopefully, if we ever get a best on best down the road, Canada's got a big matchup against the States, and it's pretty well 50-50 in my books. Sure, Canada's probably got the three big name superstars, but the US are just as deep, and they have better goaltending, so they're gonna be a reckon with. So I'm nervous because I'm obviously big Canadian, but you just never know. You never know. Like, the U.S. can easily take that gold from Canada all day, any day.
I
So,
know, but
and you touched.
S-
Hmm?
McDavid, McKinnon, Sid, McCarr.
I know, I know, but they're
I
deep. The
know,
States
I
are
know, I
deep.
know, I know. They're a good hockey team, but
But I know you mean. I know you mean.
Canada's hockey sport. Or Canada's hockey
I know.
sport. Hockey is Canada's sport. Eh.
Mm,
Big
fucking
old L on that
blooper.
one. All right, super quick here. I want to
Um,
interrupt just to go back just while I'm still fresh on this. Hyman has 30 points in 27 games. It's a 91 point pace. He has 18 goals already in 27 games. He had 36 goals in 79 games last year. He's already got half the goals
Jesus,
scored in 52 less games already. Five and a
damn,
half mil.
damn, damn. That's good.
Damn, boy.
I have one out of left field. Not really left field, but another really good contract, and I don't think a lot of people really talk about this one. Is Sidney Crosby at 8.7 mil a year? Like, this guy's still producing. Yeah, sure, he's 36 years old, but he's been being paid 8.7 his whole career, and arguably the best player of our generation the last 25, 30 years, and he's still 31 points in 29 games this year as a 36-year-old. Like, on pace for 85, 90 points and on pace for about 45 to 50 goals. It's incredible what this guy can still do. Like, he still plays with the best of them. He still has, he's not the fastest player in the league, but he's probably one of the strongest on his feet. And his IQ is so good that he can still produce at high level. So, can't forget about that one because it's a pretty damn good deal.
You just kind of put a little bell in my ear on that one too. I'm curious to see when we look at and talk about this in 5-10 years down the road. Is obviously Crosby, Ovechkin. That's going to be down in history as comparable players, apples to apples. One of the better ones that you'll ever get. Who is the better
Yeah.
player, right? No doubt about it.
Yep.
Ovechkin was the better goal scorer. Arguably, no doubt about it. Crosby was a better playmaker. I'm interested to see
Yep.
in the 30 plus years. Obviously, Ovi has the cup that Crosby did. Yeah, I guess Crosby would have won back to back in his 30s, right? So Crosby has more cups in his 30s. Ovi has more goals, but Sid's clearly been the better player in the last 2 or 3 years, in my opinion. No doubt about it. I don't
Yeah.
think many people are going to
No,
sit
I
there and
agree.
argue. Like I said, goal scoring, sure, give it to Ovi in the last even 4 or 5 years. But I'm curious to see, even in the next 2 or 3 years, if they still both play, what the difference is in points and goals. Because I wouldn't be shocked based on the way Crosby looks. And for some unknown reason that we all cannot seem to figure out how Ovi's looking right now, I'd be curious to see how many goals Crosby makes up on Ovi in the next 2 to 3 years. Because I also wouldn't be shocked if Crosby outplays Ovechkin despite missing all those games early on.
Yeah, that's a
Hot
good point.
takes,
It's a great point.
baby. All right, let's
But
look
yeah,
at. So
no,
sorry, that was your best contract there. Did you have
that
another
was
one
it.
written down for best?
Sidney Crosby. Nope,
All
just
right,
Sidney
let's go
Crosby.
worst because this is where my money's made. I'm gonna lead things right off right away just because I just for
Yeah,
some unknown reason
I know where this is going.
$9.25 million for Darnell fucking Nurse. Guy works really hard. Don't get me wrong. He eats up
Yeah,
minutes, 23
yeah,
minutes a night. But Darnell, what the fuck are you
yep.
doing out there? 9.25 sheets? Kudos to you and the agent. Congrats for getting your cash. But you've got to be the worst contract in the league. I don't even know what to do. There's some games where I swear to God he's making a breakout pass and it's like he's playing for the Toronto Rock lacrosse team. Those saucer passes are 8 feet in the air, and these guys are that guy has more icings than a baked good shop. I don't get it, man. Like that guy he just is a cupcake maker when it comes to passes. Just
Oh yeah.
I don't get it. Defensive play, sure. Give me your $5 to $6 million a year, and I'll sit there and be like, okay, it's just okay contract. But 9.25 mil, 10 points. You're not doing anything offensively. They don't have you on the offensive side for power play anymore. They barely have you out there in those pressure situations. Bouchard's clearly taken that role over now. But 10 points, 30 something games, or 29 games, something like that, plus one, 9.25 sheets. Unbelievable. I'm just disgusted.
I don't even think I have anything to add to that. You pretty well
I'll go
put
on to the
everything
next
on the
one then,
table.
just so I don't get all fired up. I can feel the smoke coming out of my ears. Jonathan Huberdeau, buddy,
Yep.
feel bad for
Yep.
you, but you got to do better than
Yep.
15 points in 31 games. That's worse than you did last year. And everyone gave you the sort of the understood, moving over teams, going from Florida to Calgary, Eastern to Western Conference. You're adapting to the new circumstances. You're just fresh off this new contract, and there's a lot of pressure. Brent Sutter style, very defensively, worked you out a little bit. You didn't feel comfortable. There's no excuses anymore. You're
Yeah,
supposed
there's
to be the
nothing.
guy there. Goudreau leaves. You're the best
Yep.
playmaker in town. You're coming off of 100 and something point season in Florida 2 years ago. Last year was, like I said, massively downplayed. I think if I'm correct on this one, Huberdeau holds the record for biggest drop off in point differential from year to year of any NHL player in NHL history.
Wasn't it like 50
He went
points or
from like
something?
110 down to like 50. And now he might go from 110 down to like 39. Well, 50 to 39. But for 10 and a half
Yeah, that's
sheets,
sad.
that's embarrassing, man. He's playing 17 and a half minutes of ice, too, first line power play. What
Yeah,
the hell's going on in
that's tough.
Calgary, man?
Yeah. I remember touching base on it earlier. I don't know what's going on in that locker room. It's just something's up, and it's just not sitting well. Obviously with Huberdeau, but even the rest of the guys too. Like no one's a point per game. No one's producing like Kadri's not producing like he did in Colorado. Sure, he had a great core around him, but I mean Calgary. I mean they got names around them. Elias
Yeah.
Lindholm, and you're supposed to have Huberdeau. So I don't know what
Yeah.
the hell's going on. It's a
I mean,
weird vibe
Kadri's
for me.
there
I
too.
don't
He's
know.
solid offensive
Yeah.
flair kind of guy. Like they've got a couple really
Yeah.
strong defensemen on the back end as well, right? That obviously we know about. We touched on Mangiapane's there. It's weird. Michael Backlund, Blake Coleman, they've got a solid lineup. There's a lot of experience in that lineup. Mackenzie Weegar, Anderson, Hannafin, Tanev, like Markstrom and
Yeah,
net.
I know.
They should be a playoff team. It's really
They
weird.
should
That's a
be.
weird team, man. Connor McDavid single-handedly destroyed that franchise. I love it.
Yeah, literally.
Even too, just super quick, the last two that I had written down, a little bit more irrelevant, but just to put it in perspective, Marc-Edouard Vlasic is making $7 million for the San Jose
I
Sharks.
didn't even know
I
he was
think
in
he's
the league
36
still.
years old right now. Good for him for getting his money. That guy was one of the
Yeah,
best
hey,
defensemen in the league for a very long time. Went to the Cup
he had some
Finals
good
with
years.
them. Unfortunately, they ended up losing, of course. Was a big part of that team with Joe Thornton, Pavelski, Couture, a lot of those really strong years that they had. Vlasic was the go-to guy, right? $7 million, 1 point in 16 games, entering Connor Brown territory on that one. But just, yeah, crazy.
I'm pretty
Sorry?
I'm pretty sure he was on Team Canada.
Yeah, he was a couple
Oh,
5, 6
I
years
think
ago
he
or
was
so.
the Sochi
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
maybe?
he's a gold medal winner. Like I said, for what he did and what he
Yeah.
was back in the day when he was in his prime,
Yeah.
unbelievable defenseman, but, obviously with San Jose not necessarily being a contender right now, it's not as, emphasized, of course, but yeah, oof, $7 million. I'm sure they're pretty excited to get that off the books. But kudos to him for a tremendous career so far. He's only seeing 13 minutes of time on ice, making $7 million. So good for you getting your money when you can. And of course,
Yep.
I went off of it. I don't want to get into further detail on this, but Jack Campbell, $5 million for the next 4 years, 4.49 goals against, and an 873 save percentage in 5 games this year. The Oilers are basically paying him $5 million to not play for them right now. So, between $5 million and an AHL goalie and Darnell Nurse probably making about $4 to $5 million more than he's actually playing to his ability for. What would the Oilers do right now with an extra $8 or $9 million to spare? Like that would be crazy to say the least. So I'm not going to fire it up about it. There's no point in defending those two contracts anymore because they're just both terrible. Anything else? Any
Yep.
other contracts you got there that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I got one, and I defended this guy for years 'cause I love the way he played, but I can't defend him anymore because it's pretty bad. But Seth Jones making 9.5 sheets in Chicago.
That's
It's a tough
I was
team,
gonna say
but
though, like I wonder if you put him on a better team. Like even when he started out, he had a little bit more offense around him. Obviously, he was a little bit more
sure.
nurtured in Nashville, of course, fourth overall pick. You had Roman Yossi, you had Matthias Ekholm, you had Shea Weber. Like you had a lot of guys that guy was like, okay, this is great. And then obviously too, for some unknown reason, Nashville said he's not good enough. Let's do 1-for-1 for Johansson. And from there on, man, like you said, that's a tough look. 9.5 mil. I do think he's way more capable than he's showing. I think the potential's there. But now you look at him, and
Yeah.
that guy's close to 30 years old now. He's certainly not young anymore. But
Yeah.
with Bedard there, of course, maybe you see next summer you get a lot more free agents wanting to go over there. So we'll see, but oof, yeah, that's a tough one. They're not contending anytime soon, but even too, not a lot of teams are going to be able to afford him if they wanted to go after and trade for him either, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
that's a weird one. Anything else you want to jump on that one there?
Nope.
All
That
right,
is
cool.
it.
I think let's wrap that one up here for now. Like I said, we've got Christmas coming in. Even World Juniors. I think was there one more thing on World Jays you wanted to go off on?
Yeah, just something really quick. Big news that came out today. Matt Poitras from the Bruins has been loaned to Team
Huge
Canada.
news.
I know,
Huge
which is
news.
sweet because he's a sick player for Boston. He rolled as the number 1, number 2 center for a few games with the Bruins. I know a lot of people, they had that open spot available, so I think Team Canada was really hoping that maybe him or Benson, but Benson looks too good on Buffalo, so there's no way. I didn't think they were going to let him go. But just getting Matt Poitras is going to be a key piece to that lineup. He'll be that number 1 center for Canada, so I'm very excited as a Canadian. But the two players I'm going to be looking for are Boston University line mates, Macklin Celebrini, projected 2024 first overall pick, and Montreal Canadiens pride possession in Lane Hudson, who is a defenseman for the United States, and he looks fantastic for BU. So I'm excited to see what these two bring. I'm a little disappointed that Cole Eisinger isn't going to be playing for the U.S. He's projected to be number 2 overall, not being able to showcase his skills on the biggest stage at his level. It is disappointing, but maybe next year he'll have that opportunity because it's just too bad. Usually when you see a second overall or projected second overall pick coming up, usually they're probably playing in these World Juniors. So it's just unfortunate to see, but maybe it's something the U.S. saw that we don't, and he didn't make the cut.
And just to
But I'm
just to
excited.
end the topic on that one there, and to end the podcast here, anyone who's interested, Macklin Celebrini, currently projected first overall pick. If everybody looks as of today, December 18th, who's projected the first overall pick right now? The Chicago Blackhawks. So things could very well turn around a lot quicker in Chicago than most
Ooh.
people expect if they somehow bring in Bedard and Celebrini back-to-back years. However, getting the first overall pick does not always guarantee success. Ask the Edmonton Oilers. And without further ado, folks, this has been another episode of the Soft Dump in the Corner presented by North Six Sports. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Yes.
Please like, share, subscribe, rate 5 stars if you're listening via podcast. Give us a little thumbs up on the old YouTube channel, a little subscribe. That goes a long way. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. We will tune in next time.